Emily Parker's Thursday morning started like any other in her quiet Portland home. The sound of rain tapping on the kitchen window, the smell of coffee drifting through the air, it was calm, almost too calm. Her husband, Daniel, had already left for another business trip, leaving behind a short note on the counter, "Back Sunday. Love you." She smiled faintly but felt that familiar emptiness. Their marriage had turned into routine, kind, polite, but distant. By afternoon, Emily was folding laundry when her phone rang. It was Daniel. His voice was cheerful, as always, but hurried. "Hey, I need a favor," he said. "What's up?" "You remember my friend Mark from college? His car broke down a few blocks from our house. I told him you might be able to help, maybe give him a ride to the mechanic." Emily hesitated for a moment. She'd only met Mark twice before, during holiday dinners and one barbecue years ago. She remembered him as quiet, friendly, the type of man who always listened more than he spoke. "Sure," she said after a pause. "I can help him." "Thanks, Em. I owe you one," Daniel replied before hanging up. Half an hour later, she found Mark standing by his car on the side of the road. He looked tired, wearing a simple gray hoodie and jeans, with a touch of frustration in his eyes. When he saw her car pull over, his expression softened into relief. "Emily, you're a lifesaver," he said with a smile that carried genuine warmth. "It's no problem," she replied, unlocking the doors. "Hop in." As they drove toward the mechanic's shop, conversation came easily. Mark told her he'd recently moved back to town after years away. His voice was calm and kind, the kind that made you want to keep listening. They talked about Portland's unpredictable weather, the smell of rain, favorite coffee places downtown. It was simple talk, yet it felt alive. For the first time in weeks, Emily found herself smiling without trying. When they reached the repair shop, Mark thanked her again. "You didn't have to do this," he said, his voice sincere. "Daniel asked me, so it's nothing," she replied lightly. He laughed. Still, not everyone would have bothered. Most people just send a text and forget. There was something in the way he said it, a quiet honesty, that caught her off guard. She brushed it off quickly, said goodbye, and drove away. But as she turned the corner, she caught herself glancing in the mirror, watching him for a second longer than she should have. That evening, Emily tried to focus on dinner, but her mind drifted back to that conversation in the car. She didn't understand why. Maybe it was because Mark had looked her in the eyes when he spoke. Maybe it was because she hadn't felt truly seen in a long time. 2 days later, Mark texted her. "Hey, thanks again for helping the other day." "Got my car fixed finally," she replied politely. "Glad to hear that. Hope it didn't cost too much," he answered with a small joke about the bill. And somehow that turned into a short chat. It was casual, friendly, nothing more. Or, at least, that's what Emily told herself. By the end of the week, Mark called again. His mechanic needed another quick drop-off. Daniel was still away, so Emily agreed. She told herself it was just being kind, helping a friend of her husband. That's all. When Mark got in the car again, it felt strangely natural. They talked more openly this time. He mentioned his recent divorce and how quiet life had become afterward. Emily nodded, understanding that silence all too well. There was no flirting, no inappropriate words, just two people sharing pieces of their loneliness in a car that suddenly felt smaller than before. After dropping him off, Mark thanked her with a soft, almost grateful look. "You're easy to talk to," he said before stepping out. Emily smiled, but as she drove home, her hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Why did her heart feel heavy? She hadn't done anything wrong. She'd just helped a friend. That's what she kept repeating to herself. That night, she sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone aimlessly. Every sound in the house felt louder. The clock ticking, the wind outside. She opened her messages again and saw Mark's name. A simple goodnight from him. She didn't reply, but she read it twice before putting her phone down. The next morning, she woke up with an uneasy feeling. It wasn't guilt exactly, it was confusion. She loved Daniel, she reminded herself. He was her husband, her partner. But somewhere deep inside, she knew something was missing between them. When Daniel called that afternoon, she answered with a bright tone. "Hey, how's the trip?" "Busy," he said. "Just 2 more meetings and I'll be home." She wanted to tell him she missed him, but the words stayed stuck in her throat. Instead, she said, "Drive safe, okay?" "Always," he replied. After hanging up, Emily looked out the window. The sky was gray again, and raindrops blurred the view outside. She realized she had spent more time thinking about a conversation with Marka. Man, she barely knew then about her own husband. Later that day, while cleaning the kitchen, she found the note Daniel had left that morning before his trip. It said, "Back Sunday. Love you." She read it again and realized she hadn't felt that love in a long time. Not because Daniel didn't care, but because life had quietly stolen their closeness. That evening, she decided to go for a walk to clear her mind. The rain had stopped, and the streetlights reflected softly on the wet pavement. She passed the small cafe Daniel used to take her 2 years ago. Through the window, she saw couples laughing, talking, living moments she missed. Then she heard a familiar voice behind her. Emily. She turned and saw Mark holding a takeout cup of coffee, surprised but smiling. "Didn't expect to see you here." She laughed nervously. "I just needed some air. Rain walks are the best therapy," he said. They stood under the awning, talking for a few minutes. It was innocent, just two people sharing stories about their days. But there was a warmth in his tone, and when he looked at her, she felt that spark again, the one she didn't want to acknowledge. As she walked home later, her thoughts raced. It was just a coincidence, she told herself. A favor, a chat, nothing more. But deep down, she knew something had shifted quietly inside her, a small but undeniable pull. By the time she reached home, she stood at the doorway, heart heavy with emotions she didn't fully understand. She looked around the quiet house, the empty chair at the dinner table, and whispered to herself, "What's happening to me?" That night, Emily couldn't sleep. The rain began again, soft against the window. She turned over, staring into the darkness, and realized she wasn't just missing Daniel's presence, she was missing connection, attention, warmth. And though she didn't know it yet, that simple favor would soon unravel everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the delicate line between kindness and temptation. It started with a favor, but it wouldn't stay simple for long. The following week, Emily tried to go back to her routine morning coffee, chores, grocery runs, and long, quiet evenings in front of the television. Daniel had returned from his trip, exhausted as always, diving straight into work calls and late-night emails. They spoke politely, shared small smiles, and asked about each other's day. But there was a distance between them that neither dared to name. Emily told herself to forget about Mark. It had been a simple favor, nothing more. But life had a way of testing that kind of resolve. 2 days later, her phone buzzed again. "Hey, Emily, sorry to bother you. The mechanic needs me to pick up the car tomorrow. Any chance you're free for a quick ride?" She stared at the message longer than she should have. She could have said no, could have told him to call a cab, but she didn't. Instead, she typed, "Sure, no problem." When Mark got into her car the next morning, he looked tired but smiled in that quiet, genuine way she remembered. "You really are saving me again," he said, laughing softly. Emily smiled. "Well, let's hope this is the last time your car breaks down." They talked easily as the city moved around them. Mark told her about his new job, how he was trying to settle into life after the divorce. His honesty surprised her. He spoke about how strange it felt to come home to silence every night. To have no one waiting. Emily listened, her chest tightening. She didn't interrupt. She just let him speak. When he finally asked about her life, she shrugged and said, "It's fine. Daniel travels a lot. Work keeps him busy." "You sound lonely," Mark said gently. The words hit harder than she expected. She gave a small smile. Maybe just a little. By the time they reached the mechanic's shop, the air between them felt heavier. Neither said much as he got out of the car. Before closing the door, he turned and said quietly, "You deserve someone who listens to you." Emily, then he left. That one sentence stayed with her all day. That night, while Daniel was buried in work, she found herself scrolling through old photos of their early years together, smiling faces. Shared trips, silly moments. They looked so happy back then. What had changed? Maybe life, maybe time. Or maybe, as she feared, they had just stopped noticing each other. A few evenings later, she went grocery shopping. As she stepped into the parking lot, it started raining again. She rushed toward her car, and through the downpour, she spotted Mark walking toward her with a grocery bag. He laughed when he saw her. "You and the rain again," he said, holding his jacket over her head as they ran to her car. They sat inside, laughing breathlessly, wet and shivering. It was such a simple, silly moment, yet something about it felt alive, like the world had color again. When their laughter faded, they looked at each other, the sound of rain filling the silence. For a second, it felt like time had stopped. Emily looked away first. "I should get home," she said quickly, starting the car. Mark nodded, his voice low. "Yeah, me too." The drive home was quiet, but not empty. Her heart beat faster than it should. She tried not to think about it, but that warmth lingered, the feeling of being noticed, cared for, seen. That night, Daniel was on another late call, pacing the living room, talking about deadlines. Emily stood in the doorway, watching him, wondering if he even noticed the change in her. When he hung up, she asked, "Do you ever miss how things used to be?" He gave her a tired smile. "Of course I do. But life's just busy right now." She nodded, though deep down, she knew busy had become their excuse for everything. The next morning, she got another text from Mark. "Thank you for last night. You made a rainy day better." She typed back, glad to help. But then he replied, "You really are easy to talk to. I don't say that often." Her fingers hovered over the screen. She could end the conversation right there. She could set a boundary. But instead, she sent a simple, smiley face. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep the thread alive. Days passed. They didn't see each other often, but they talked more short texts about daily life. Funny stories, moments that filled the quiet gaps of her day. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that crossed the line. Yet every time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped in a way it hadn't in years. One afternoon, she sat in a cafe reading a book when Mark walked in. He looked surprised to see her. "This must be fate," he joked. She laughed softly, feeling both nervous and oddly happy. They decided to sit together. For the next hour, they talked about everything's regrets, how life sometimes drifts away from what we imagined. Mark told her, "You remind me what kindness looks like." Emily smiled, but deep inside she felt a sting of guilt. When she finally checked the time, she panicked. "Oh, I have to go Daniel's home early tonight." Mark nodded, but his eyes lingered on her. "It's okay. Take care, Emily." As she drove home, she told herself she'd stop this. Whatever this was, it wasn't love, wasn't an affair, but it was dangerous in a different way. It made her feel things she shouldn't. Daniel was already home, sitting on the couch with takeout food. "Hey, dinner's here," he said with a smile. She smiled back, grateful and guilty all at once. They ate quietly. He asked about her day, and she said it was fine. But her voice trembled slightly, and Daniel noticed. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said too quickly. That night, while brushing her hair, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes looked softer, almost sad. She wasn't sure who she was anymore, the faithful wife waiting for her husband, or the lonely woman who found comfort in someone else's kindness. The next day, she tried to delete Mark's number, but couldn't bring herself to do it. Instead, she silenced the notifications and placed the phone face down. Yet even then, she couldn't stop thinking about him, the way he listened, the way he made her laugh without trying. A week later, Daniel mentioned he'd be traveling again for work. "Just 3 days this time," he said, kissing her on the forehead before leaving. As his car disappeared down the street, Emily stood in the doorway, her heart conflicted. Part of her wanted peace. The other part wanted that feeling of warmth again, the one she got when Mark was around. She made tea, sat by the window, and watched the rain fall again. She knew the line between friendship and something more was getting thinner every day. Later that evening, her phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "I hope you're okay. Haven't heard from you in a while." Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "I'm fine. Just trying to stay busy." he replied. You sound like me. Maybe we both need a break from pretending we're fine. Emily didn't reply. She placed the phone aside, her chest heavy with emotions she didn't want to name. That night, as she lay in bed alone, she whispered into the dark, "What am I doing?" The truth was, she didn't know. She hadn't crossed a line, but she was standing too close to it. And somewhere deep down, she feared that one small step could change everything. Because what started as a simple favor had turned into something she could no longer ignore quiet. Forbidden pull she didn't want but couldn't escape. The next few weeks passed quietly. But Emily felt anything but calm inside. She tried to keep herself busy grocery runs, cleaning, working on small projects around the house, but her thoughts never stopped spinning. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart skipped. Sometimes it was Daniel, checking in briefly from work. But sometimes it was Mark Hand. Those were the messages that made her pause, smile, and then feel guilty for smiling. Daniel had been home for a while now, but his presence didn't bring the comfort it used to. He spent most evenings on his laptop, typing reports or answering calls late into the night. Their conversations had become short and practical. Did you pay the bills? Can you pick up the dry cleaning? The warmth they once had was buried under years of routine and fatigue. One morning, while Daniel was getting ready for work, he said casually, "Mark called me yesterday. He said thanks again for helping him out when his car broke down." Emily froze for a moment, but managed to keep her voice steady. "Oh yeah, that was weeks ago." Daniel smiled and nodded. "He's a good guy. Always liked him." Then he kissed her on the cheek and left for work. After the door closed, Emily sat down, her heart pounding. She hadn't done anything wrong, but something about hearing Mark's name from Daniel's lips filled her with unease. She didn't like how it sounded, how close those two worlds were getting. Later that day, while she was at the local farmer's market, she heard someone call her name. She turned and saw Mark standing there, holding a small basket of apples. "Hey, Emily," he said with that easy smile that always disarmed her. "Didn't expect to see you here." They talked for a while, just casual small talk about the weather, groceries, and local shops. It all seemed innocent, but as they walked through the stalls, laughing at something silly, Emily noticed a few people glancing their way. It hit her then how it might look from the outside. A married woman spending time alone with another man. Her stomach tightened. "I should get going," she said quickly. Mark looked at her, slightly confused. "Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, I just remembered I have to get back." "All right," he said gently. "Take care, Emily." She walked away fast, her pulse racing. On the drive home, her thoughts collided: shame, fear, confusion. It wasn't just about appearances anymore. It was about what she felt when she was around him. She couldn't keep pretending it was nothing. That night, Daniel came home late again. Emily waited for him with dinner, but he barely touched his food. "Sorry," he said. "I've got a deadline. Let's talk tomorrow." She nodded quietly, pushing her plate away. Tomorrow had become their favorite word, an easy way to avoid today. Later. As she was cleaning up, her phone lit up on the counter. It was a message from Mark. "You seemed upset earlier. Did I do something wrong?" She stared at the screen, torn between honesty and silence. Finally, she typed, "No, it's not you. I just think we've been talking too much." A few moments later, his reply came. "If that's what you want, I'll respect it. But I meant every word I said. Care about you, Emily, more than I should." Her breath caught. She didn't reply. She turned off her phone and went to bed, though she couldn't sleep. His words echoed in her mind again and again, "more than I should." The next morning, she woke up feeling heavy. She avoided her phone, avoided thinking too deeply. But by evening, curiosity and longing won. She opened her messages, hoping he hadn't written again. He hadn't. Somehow that hurt even more. For the next few days, Emily tried to focus on Daniel. She made his favorite breakfast, asked about his work, tried to bring back the laughter they'd once shared. But Daniel barely noticed the effort. He was kind but distracted. His affection felt automatic, not intentional. She wanted to shake him, to make him see her not as his wife who managed the home, but as the woman he once loved deeply, One Saturday afternoon, Emily was trimming flowers in the front yard when she saw a familiar car stop by. Her breath hitched Mark. He stepped out slowly, his expression uncertain. "I'm sorry for dropping by like this," he said softly. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay." "Mark, you can't just," she started, but he interrupted gently. "I know. I shouldn't be here. But I couldn't stop thinking about you. I don't want to ruin anything for you, Emily. I needed to say goodbye properly." The sincerity in his voice broke something inside her. She didn't know what to say. "You should go," she whispered, glancing nervously at the driveway. He nodded slowly. "I just want you to know you're someone special. Don't forget that." At that exact moment, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway made her freeze. Daniel, her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Mark stepped back instantly, his voice low. "It's okay. I'm leaving." She started, but stopped herself. He gave her one last look, a silent goodbye, then turned and walked to his car. Daniel got out, glancing curiously toward the street. "Was that Mark?" Emily swallowed hard. "Yeah, he just stopped by to thank me for helping before. It was quick." Daniel looked at her for a moment longer than usual. "Everything all right?" "Of course," she said to Fast. He nodded, though his expression was thoughtful. Okay, that night Emily barely ate. She sat in the living room long after Daniel went to bed, replaying every second of what happened. She hadn't cheated, but she had crossed an invisible line, an emotional one. And that realization hurt more than she expected. She went upstairs quietly and looked at Daniel sleeping, his face calm, unaware. She felt tears fill her eyes. How did they end up here? Two people in the same house, but miles apart inside. The next morning, Daniel surprised her by asking, "Want to go out for breakfast?" It had been months since he suggested that. She agreed, relieved and nervous at once. They sat at a small cafe downtown, the same place they used to visit when they first dated. For a while, things felt almost normal. They talked about small memories, laughed about old stories. Emily realized how easy it was to remember the man she fell in love with. As they walked back to the car, Daniel stopped and looked at her seriously. "You've been quiet lately. If something's wrong, I want you to tell me." Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him everything, the loneliness, the guilt, the friendship that had gone too far. But fear stopped her. Instead, she said, "I've just been feeling off lately. I think we've both been too busy." Daniel nodded, his eyes soft. "Yeah, we've let life take over. Maybe we should fix that." That night, for the first time in months, he sat beside her on the couch instead of working. They talked about plans, about taking a trip together soon. It wasn't perfect, but it was something, a small spark trying to return. Still, when Emily lay in bed later, she couldn't shake the image of Mark leaving, his eyes filled with unspoken words. She felt a mix of sadness and relief. What she had with him was never real, but it had exposed the emptiness she had ignored for too long. And as she drifted to sleep, Emily realized something painfully clear. What she had been searching for in Mark wasn't love. It was connection, something she had lost at home. But she also knew now that the truth was out in the open. Life was about to change. Because secrets like these never stayed hidden forever. You said a week passed after Mark's unexpected visit, and Emily thought things were finally settling. She hadn't seen or heard from him since that day, and part of her was grateful. The other part, the quieter, lonelier part, felt the ache of something unresolved. Daniel seemed calmer, too, trying more often to talk, to smile, to reconnect. Emily wanted to believe everything was back to normal. But deep down, she knew that something fragile still lingered beneath their silence. One quiet Sunday morning, while Emily was preparing breakfast, Daniel came into the kitchen looking unusually serious. His phone was in his hand, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said. Her heart sank instantly. "About what?" she asked, trying to sound casual. He placed the phone on the table. "About Mark." Emily froze. Her mind started racing. "What about him?" Daniel took a deep breath. "He called me yesterday." Her stomach twisted. "He did?" "Yes. Daniel said slowly. He told me everything. Emily's pulse quickened. Everything. What does that mean? Daniel sat down, his tone calm but heavy. He said you helped him when his car broke down, that you spent time together a few times after that. He told me nothing physical happened, but he said he started to care about you. And he wanted me to know before it became something worse. Emily stood frozen, unable to speak. Shame rushed through her like a wave. Daniel, he raised a hand gently. He didn't blame you. He said you were kind, that you listened to him when he needed someone. But he also said you seemed lonely. Her eyes filled with tears. He's right, she whispered. I was lonely. I didn't mean for it to happen, Daniel. I never crossed a line, I swear. Daniel looked at her for a long time. His voice was steady but soft. I believe you, but you let him fill a space that should have been mine. Those words broke her. She covered her face with her hands. I'm sorry, she said through tears. I didn't want this. I just felt invisible. I wanted someone to listen. That's all. Daniel stood and walked toward her, his face filled with both pain and understanding. Emily, I've been distant. I know that. I thought working hard meant I was taking care of us, but I stopped taking care of you. I stopped being here. She lowered her hand slowly, tears still streaming down her cheeks. I should have told you. I should have said how lonely I was instead of looking for comfort somewhere else. Daniel nodded quietly. We both failed each other in different ways. The room went silent except for the faint sound of rain outside. Emily didn't know what to say. She expected anger, yelling, blame, but instead, Daniel's calmness cut deeper than any argument could. After a long pause, he said, Do you want to fix this? She blinked, surprised. What? He looked into her eyes. Do you still want us? Because if you do, I'm willing to fight for it. But we can't go back to pretending. We start fresh or we walk away. I need to know. Emily felt her chest tighten. Despite everything, the distance, the hurt, she knew her answer immediately. I want us. I never stopped